Like I mentioned, brand new series, John the Baptist, the title Locust and Honey. And I got to just share with you guys, Mrs. Holly brought me some actual few little goodie bag. First, it's barbecue grasshoppers right here. And I actually ate one earlier and it's still stuck in my teeth. John, the reason we titled this series Locusts and Honey is that's what John the Baptist ate. He was a wild man. And then she gave me look at that, pure honeycomb right there. My kids are like, they just want to eat this like straight out of it. It looks awesome. So excited for my little props this evening, It's awesome. It's awesome. And so for the next 7 weeks, we're going to be looking at the life of John the Baptist. And it's really a life worth studying. This is what F.B. Meyer says, speaking of the life of John the Baptist. F.B. Meyer says this: few studies can bring out to clearer demonstration the superlative glory of Christ than a thoughtful consideration of the story of the forerunner. And if F.B. Meyer doesn't make it even grander, how about Jesus himself, right? Matthew 11:11, speaking of John the Baptist, says this: "Assuredly I say to you, that among those born of women there is not risen one greater than John the Baptist." So we are embarking on a great study. Again, locust, the idea of, the locust was something that devoured the land and destroyed. And on one hand, John the Baptist had a message of destruction. Repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. Man, you better turn, you better get right, you're going to get left, But then he also had a sweet message, like honey. Behold, that's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And so this evening, we're going to really just focus on, the title of tonight's message is The Arrival. And really, we're going to be looking at the parents of John the Baptist, Zacharias and Elizabeth, who, as I've been studying and praying, just really are a phenomenal couple. And so we're going to spend some time thinking about them and their family, their environment, and the life and the times of how they were living, what was going on. And what's interesting, we're going to find out, is we're going to look at the parents of John the Baptist. We're going to look at the pre-announcement of the birth of John the Baptist. And then we'll look at a little bit at the perplexity that Zacharias had when the angel said, "You're going to have a son." He was like, what are you talking about, I was thinking about the idea of a pre-announcement. What happens this evening in the Word is this angel comes to Zacharias and tells him he's going to have a baby, or not him, his wife, of course. And I started thinking about this like a pre-announcement. Like people right now are really into baby announcements. I don't know if you know, like if your baby's born in October, then you're going to put him like in a pumpkin and take a picture of him and send him all over the place. Look at my baby, he's born in October. He's 14 pounds and 6 ounces and all these different things. Or maybe your baby's born in Christmas time. You're going to put him in a Santa Claus hat, or buy a Christmas tree or something. And there's all these announcements really big right now. Maybe you're aware or not, is like gender announcement. Like, you tell your friend what the doctor puts a gender like in a little envelope, and you give it to your friend, and they like bake a cake. And on the inside it'll be blue or it'll be pink. And so you're there and everyone's excited. They're going to cut the cake and you're like, oh, it's a girl, or it's a boy, whatever, because the cake is blue or pink. Kevin Strout, our kids pastor, he's going to be doing that. They told someone, so someone knows the sex of their baby, boy or girl, and someone's going to bake a cake or make a balloon and you're going to pop it and it's going to, confetti's going to come out of it or something, And, we're really into like announcements. Well, what's so interesting is this angel, before Elizabeth even conceived, they're talking about the birth of this boy and what he's going to be about and what he's doing. So really, really interesting and incredible. Well, let's look at a few things first. We're going to set the stage for a moment. Let's look at verse 5 in Luke chapter 1, verse 5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So what I want us to think about just for a moment is that phrase there. There was in the days of Herod. Now we went through the book of Luke about 4 years ago, I think on a Wednesday night. So maybe you remember some of these things, but this is a time in the period of the nation of Israel. It's a pretty dark time. Herod would call himself Herod the Great. He was the Rome-appointed ruler of Israel. He called himself the King of the Jews even. And he was like a brilliant, evil genius. He was just a skilled architect. He would rebuild the temple for the Jews, and it would be grander than even Solomon's temple. They say from 30 miles away, you could see the gold of Herod's temple that he built gleaming from the rooftops. It was, some would say, like 34 acres. It's a huge temple that he built to try to gain favor of the Jews that he was ruling. But he also was extremely wicked, evil. We're told that he's almost going to die, like a week before he dies. He has one of his sons killed just because he doesn't like him, doesn't want him to rule after him. He has, out of his 10 wives, he has a few of them killed as well. Herod's the one that when he hears the birth of the Messiah coming, he's the one that says, hey, kill all the babies in this area. So he was a bad dude. And that's who's ruling at this time. It's a bad time in the nation of Israel, dark days. In fact, maybe you are aware, if you're a Bible scholar, that this would be right before this time, would be called the time of the 400 years of silence. When the Old Testament closes in Malachi, there's 400 years where there is no prophet of the Lord. There's no word from God. There's no voice. There's no movement, apparent movement of God amongst his people. We have no record of it. Old Testament closes and the New Testament opens. It's been 400 years. At the close of the Old Testament, it was the Persians who were in charge. The Persians are the ones that conquered the Babylonians, right? And they were in charge for a while. And then a guy named Alexander, people think he was pretty great, he, within 10 years, conquered the entire world, And in fact, it's told that when he's done kind of conquering the world, he begins to cry like there's nothing left to do, And Alexander the Great, he conquers and rules, and he begins to Hellenize the world, begins to infiltrate Greek culture and Greek language, Greek gods. And at the age of 33, he dies. And he has this huge empire. And on his deathbed, it said, who do you want to take over? And he says, give it to the strongest. Well, he had 4 generals, and his huge kingdom was broken up into 4 compartments to his 4 generals. Their names are really hard to pronounce. I'm not going to pretend to try. But 2 of them, Ptolemy and Seleucus. Ptolemy was in charge of Egypt, and Seleucus ended up being kind of in charge of Syria. Egypt and Syria, in between, is a little place called Israel. And so these 2 north and south areas were always fighting who can have control, and Israel found itself often in the middle. Well, there came a time when there was a king of Syria named Antiochus Epiphanes. They called him the Beast. He was so radical, so gnarly. He harassed the Jews. He harassed Israel. He took away the Sabbath. He's the one that set up this Greek image in the temple. He sacrificed a pig in the temple and squirted the blood all over the place. I mean, it was just a gnarly time. He burned books of the law. It was a really, really bad time for Israel and the people there. Well, it was so bad that you might have heard of the Maccabean revolt about 167 BC. Some like little rebel army. It's like we're tired of this guy ruling over us, and they took over and they took control of the temple and they kind of regained authority and regained control. That was in 167 BC, and they began to kind of take their little nation back and Jerusalem back for a season. And then in the year 63 BC, a little thing. Have you ever heard of the Roman Empire? That kind of happened and began to just take control again of the whole area. And now we find ourselves back in the New Testament. Rome ruled Israel, and the empire was so great and vast. And Herod, of course, at this time is now in charge of Israel's dark, dark days for the nation. People hadn't heard the voice of God. They hadn't felt like he was moving. And so that's where we're in. Verse 5, there was in the days of Herod, this 400 years of silence. Rome is now in charge. This wicked, brilliant ruler is over them. In the midst of this dark season, we see 2 bright, shining stars. These 2 parents, Zacharias and Elizabeth. And as we look at them, they just blow me away. We first look at their background. We see here again in verse 5 that Zacharias was a priest. Now, he was of the lineage of Aaron. If you were a direct descendant of Aaron, you automatically became a priest. Some would say there's 20,000 priests at this time in Israel. 20,000. That's like a lot of people doing the same job. And so what they would have to do is they would cast lots to see at what time a certain priest would have a certain role. So if you were a priest in the nation at this time, you only served 2 weeks a year. Like 1 week, maybe about 6 months later, another week. And the rest of the time, you're like on vacation. No, you're just back at your hometown, kind of being like a town pastor or priest, kind of helping out. But only twice a year, for 1 week at a time, would you serve in Jerusalem at the temple. And we read about his wife is Elizabeth. Elizabeth also, we read in verse 5, she was a daughter of Aaron, one of the daughters of Aaron. So these guys are like this is really awesome. He's a priest. His wife's a daughter of Aaron, a daughter of the priestly line. So these guys are like ballers. Like they're just incredible. Great little package here. And we see that it's kind of interesting. Zacharias, his name means God remembers. And Elizabeth's name, it means God's oath. So kind of together, God remembers his oath. Kind of cool. And we're going to see that God did not forget Israel. And at the right time, he's going to set the stage for a messenger, And so look at verse 6. See, I want to look at a few things of the parents of John the Baptist. First, we see it in verse 6. And they were both righteous before God. I just was really blown away. That word both. They were both righteous. Meaning this, they were a husband and wife that was equally yoked. They both sought the Lord together. They both prayed together. They both read scripture together. And I just think, man, you know what? It seems to be that is more and more rare these days. It seems more often than not, we see couples, we see marriages where maybe the husband is on fire and the wife is not. And they're having trouble. They can't have spiritual conversations. More often than not, the wife is more spiritual and the husband is just a jerk, They can't have that union. One of the most blessed unions is to be united with Christ, and they don't have that. And I was just thinking, man, my years in youth ministry, I hated to see young people dating a non-believer. And if that's you here tonight, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't even fool around. I don't care if the dude is so good looking, I don't care if he owns a house in Santa Barbara. Like, this is my ticket to, owning a house. Don't forget it. It's not worth it. That's what I love about Zacharias. They both pursued the Lord. You've heard the analogy of someone standing up on a chair, right? Or even on this stage. If I were to try to pick Bob up on this stage, it'd be very hard for me to bring him up here with me. But for him to bring me down there, it's way easier, right? So that's what we see in marriages or in dating. Unequally yoked, it's just not going to work out. And so these two guys, Zacharias and Elizabeth, right there, they were both righteous before God. I love it. Righteous, meaning they were right in the sight of God. Well, how were they righteous? Oh man, they had faith that looked forward. They anticipated the Messiah. And that faith, by grace, man, they were saved. Now we have faith that looks backward, right? We look back to the cross. And that, of course, is by grace. And so through faith. And so these guys were both righteous before God. And I love how it says, they're both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless. I like how it says they were both righteous before God. It wasn't just like a ritual to them. Like, even though Zacchaeus that was his job, was to be a priest, it wasn't just like something that they had to do. No, they were righteous before God. The way that it's like walking in all the commandments, like talking about their true character. These parents, they weren't just talking the talk, right? They were walking in the commandments. It talks about like this personal life, working it out. They lived it out. And I was just challenged thinking about this. I think too many of us, we want to be righteous before man. And we want men to see us talking the talk, and help and serve and sitting in church on Sunday. And yet, when it comes to living it out on Monday, we do something totally different. And Zacharias and Elizabeth, these few verses here, they both were righteous before God. God saw their heart and their character was true. Again, I think about so many times in the years of youth ministry or just counseling here at this church, trouble comes when the parents don't walk the talk. And when their kids see them sitting in church being all holy and righteous before men, yet when they go home, they're totally different. And friends, I just tell you, that kills kids' faith right there. It makes it seem like it's nothing. It's just this thing we punch in and we punch out and it doesn't affect our life. And for Zacharias and Elizabeth, it wasn't. They were walking in the commandments. They were both righteous before God. They cared about what they looked like before God, not before man. And then again in verse 6, it says they were blameless, right? An ordinance of the Lord, they were blameless, meaning not sinless, but they were sincere. They were honest. They were true. There was nothing you could blame. You could throw nothing at them. Nothing would stick, right? They lived their life blameless. Incredible. That's, of course, how God wants us to live our life as well. So many verses talk about this idea. Ephesians 1:4, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. And so why I'm spending some moments on this is that this is the atmosphere that we're going to see John the Baptist grow up in. This is the family that he was birthed in. This was his mom. This was his dad. And they were righteous and they were blameless and they both pursued the Lord. And I think that created an environment for John the Baptist to do what he was going to do, man. Really, really cool. Now, a lot of things going well for them, but then we have verse 7. But they had no child, because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both well advanced in years. So they were blameless, they both pursued the Lord, they were righteous before God, and yet one thing they lacked, man, they didn't have a child. And in that culture, it was like a kind of a big deal. It would be seen as like a reproach. In fact, if you look over at verse 25 in chapter 1, this is Elizabeth kind of sharing in verse 25. After she finds out that she's going to have a baby, she says, "Thus the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked on me to take away my reproach among people." She really felt like because I can't have a baby, people they mock me. And maybe you've experienced, maybe you're not. Like, remember when all your friends are having babies, and maybe you're not really yet ready there, your husband's not ready yet, and everyone's getting the bugaboos and the baby Bjorn things, and like all the stroll, the double bob and the triple bob, maybe the quadruple bob for the Moors. You had a lot of baby stuff, you guys, and people are like, oh, you start kind of getting jealousy, and so you could see like Elizabeth, it was just a bummer. And then we read that not only she was barren, but then they were both well advanced in years. Like they were like super old. And it seemed like just impossible for them to be pregnant. I was thinking about this. I just did some research. I think you would like this. Just 2 months ago, May 11th, in India, a 72-year-old woman had a baby. Look at the picture right there. Isn't that gnarly? Her name is Dahinder, and his name is Mohinder. Now, she was artificially inseminated. It took 2 years, and she doesn't know exactly how old she is, but most would say she's over 70, probably 72, the oldest woman in the world to have a baby. So I don't know why I chose that. I just thought that was kind of interesting for you guys to look at. So they're barren, no child, both well advanced in years. Now what we see next is pretty cool. God's moving, even though it might seem That God is absent, he's moving. Check it out in verse 8. Zacharias will be chosen to burn incense, right? So it was that while he was serving, which, by the way, just a quick side note. I love that even though maybe things weren't going how they wanted them to go, verse 8 says, but he was still serving. He was still obeying the Lord. He was still doing what he was called to do. And even though maybe prayers of having a baby were going unanswered, seemingly, he was still serving the Lord. What an encouragement. So he is serving as a priest before God in the order of his division. According to the custom of the priesthood, his lot fell to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. So remember, I said at this time there's about 20,000 priests in Israel at this time. And you only got to serve 2 times a year for 1 week each. And so when you would serve, how would you know what to do? Like, there's not that many jobs, and so they would cast lots to figure out, okay, you're gonna kill the sacrifice, you're gonna sweep up, you're gonna, pour out the oil, you're gonna pour the blood, you're gonna get the sheep from there to here, and they would kind of cast lots for all the jobs. And so it just so happened that his lot fell to burn incense. Now, what was kind of cool about this is this only happened, you only had an opportunity to do this once in your lifetime. The lot to do this job only came around once in your lifetime, and maybe you never even got a chance to do it. There's 20,000 priests. Maybe your lot never fell to do it, but if you did it one time, you can never do it again. And so here's Zacharias. He gets chosen to burn this incense. Now, it was a pretty big deal. Under the law of Moses, right, you had this temple, and there was daily sacrifices morning and evening. And Moses said, not only does it need to be daily sacrifice, but you got to daily offer incense, morning and evening. And it accompanied the daily sacrifice. In fact, the coals from the altar were used to light the incense in the holy place. And so the priests would go in. You remember the holy place? You'd kind of peel back the first veil, and there on your left would be the menorah, the candle, the 7 branches. On the right, you got the showbread. In front of yourself, you've got this altar of incense. Behind that is the veil and the Holy of Holies behind that, with the Ark of the Covenant. Only the high priest could go in there once a year on the Day of Atonement. So the priest would go in, and he would take the coal, and he would take the incense, a little pinch. I don't know exactly how it would work, and they'd put the incense down, and they would fill up the little curtain. I mean, it's hot there, right? Can you imagine this incense in a closed room? Your eyes are burning, and it's just the idea of the prayers of the saints rising up to the Lord. Outside, the sacrifice is burning. That smoke's going up as well. The idea is the altar, the sacrifice on the altar, the sacrifice of the incense kind of going up together, kind of swirling about to be a pleasing aroma to the Lord. It was a really, really big deal. And so Zacharias, he gets chosen to do this. And what we see next is God will choose to break his 400 years of silence into this man, into this couple. In verse 11, then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. Right? So the altar of incense is in the front of him. On the right side, the showbread would have been right there. So he's like right there. Verse 12, and when Zacchaeus saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. Right? By the way, whenever people see angels in the Bible, they're always freaking out, right? So there's not like a fat baby with a diaper on and some wings. I mean, it's a sight to behold. Zacchaeus sees this now. I mean, I was just trying to picture myself, right? You're just like, you're so excited. You're in the holy place. You're the only one in there. You're just like a lifetime type of situation. And you like, did someone tell him what to do? So he's like, okay, this guy told me to come in here, and I gotta take this little incense, and then so now incense is on the little coal, and it's just filling it up, and so he's supposed to be praying. It's like this idea, he's praying for the nation. Smoke is billowing. I think his eyes are closed. I mean, I think, and he's just praying. And then he's kind of wrapping up, like, okay, it's been a few minutes. People are probably thinking I should get out of this place now. And he opens up, and there's an angel right there. And maybe he's thinking, is this normal? Maybe this is what's supposed to happen. But he freaks out, and the silence from God is broken in verse 13. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid. Zacharias, for your prayer is heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son. And you shall call his name John. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. Man, what a scene this is. Zacharias in the holy place, incense filling the room. Just so, can you imagine how close to God he probably felt right there? The holy place just within the veil, the Ark of the Covenant right there. And he's just, and then this angel, like how tall was the angel? Was it the wings filling the place? He sees this angel, he's scared, and the angel begins to speak. Do not be afraid, for your prayers have been heard. Now, what prayers had he been praying? What was he praying for at that moment? Is that the prayer that Gabriel was speaking about? We'll find out it's Gabriel in a moment. This angel was speaking about? I think at that moment, Zacharias was praying as he was kind of probably supposed to, as he talked to the other guys, say, when I go in there, what should I be praying? Well, you need to be praying for Messiah to come. You got to be praying, man, Rome is on our back. Pray for our conquering king to come. That's what you should be praying. And so I see Zacharias praying for Messiah, praying for God to send his messenger. Like Malachi would say, hey, the messenger's coming to prepare the way. Send the Messiah, send our conquering king. And so Gabriel says, hey, I've heard your prayer. Okay, you heard about Messiah? No. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son. And you shall call his name John. Now, I believe this would have really startled Zacharias. I don't think that's what he was thinking. That's not the prayer I was just praying. In fact, I believe this prayer for a son had long ceased to utter from their lips. We read that they're old, they're well advanced in age, and I think it's something they never dreamed was going to happen. It was something that they probably fervently prayed for so long, and then they said, you know what, it's not going to happen. And they let that dream go. They let that prayer go, and they ceased praying it. And what I love about this is that I believe that prayer, that maybe they even ceased praying, God heard. Now, we've just finished a 7-week series on prayer, praying like Jesus. And a few weeks ago, I taught on persistence in prayer and how we are to be a people of persistence. We talked about the parable of the widow that approaches the judge. And she basically bugs him, She doesn't leave his side, begging for justice because she knew that judge was her only source of refuge, only source of completing this problem of justice and rightness. And we encourage each other as a people to persistently pursue God in our prayers, to never give up, to never stop praying. But don't we still? I know I do. What prayers have you ceased to pray? A loved one, a healed marriage, a relationship, a healing. I believe God hears. We're confident that he hears all our prayers. This is what 1 John 5:14 says. This is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. He hears. We know